Around the World Lit Audio. Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Part 1, Week 2, Chapters 5 to 7, Full Narration Script. Channel Intro. Welcome to Around the World Lit Audio, the greatest novels ever written, from every corner of the world, in English. New chapter every week, free to listen. Chapter Recap. In Week 1, we met Raskolnikov, a brilliant, penniless former student in St. Petersburg, who has been planning a murder. He visited the pawnbroker Alona Ivanovna to rehearse the layout of her apartment. He met the broken government clerk Marmeladov in a tavern, and heard the story of his daughter Sonia, who had been driven to prostitution to support her family. He read a letter from his mother about his sister Dunya's sacrifice, her plan to marry a man she did not love in order to help her brother. He overheard a student in the market voice his exact theory out loud. And then, alone in his garret, he said the words aloud, "I am going to do it." In Week 2, he does it. Part 1, Chapters 5 through 7. Part 1, Chapter 5. He dreamed again. The dream was the horse dream, the one he had dreamed before, the one about the mare being beaten to death in the village square while the crowd watched and the small boy ran forward trying to stop it and could not. He dreamed it again with the same terrible clarity, the same patient dying eyes of the horse, the same helplessness of the child who was himself. He woke in the early morning with the dream still on him, like a physical weight. He lay in his garret and thought, "I cannot do it. The whole thing is madness. The theory is one thing, clean and logical and convincing in the abstract, but the act itself is something entirely different. The act requires him to stand in a room with an old woman, and raise something over her head and bring it down, and there is no theory in the world that feel anything other than what it is." He felt relief. He felt the particular relief of a man who has been carrying something very heavy for a long time, and has just set it down. He would not do it. He would go back to his life, whatever his life was, with its garret and its debt, and its unfinished degree and its complete absence of prospects, and he would find another way. There was always another way. He dressed. He went out into the city. It was a warm July morning. The city was going about its business with the indifference cities maintain toward individual human crises. He walked without direction, feeling lighter than he had in months, and then stopped. He was standing in the Haymarket. He was standing, specifically, near a woman selling goods from a tray. Near her was her young daughter. Near them was a man he recognized, a man who worked as a painter, a tradesman, someone from the neighborhood. The man was talking to the daughter. He was telling her that Alona Ivanovna, the pawnbroker, would be alone tomorrow evening. Her sister Lizaveta, who usually stayed with her, had arranged to be elsewhere. He had heard this from Lizaveta herself. The pawnbroker would be alone from 7 o'clock. Raskolnikov stood very still. He had set the thing down. He had felt the relief of setting it down. And then the universe had reached out and picked it back up, and handed it to him again, this time with a specific time and a confirmed opportunity. He stood in the Haymarket, and felt the relief drain out of him. He thought, "This is a sign." He thought, "There is no such thing as a sign." He thought, "But if there were." He went home. He lay on his sofa, and stared at the ceiling, and the decision remade itself inside him, with the quiet inevitability of something that was always going to happen regardless of what he told himself in the middle of the night. He slept. He dreamed of an oasis, of a cool, blue, impossible place of water and shade in the middle of a desert, a place of perfect rest that dissolved when he reached for it. He woke with his mouth dry and the July heat pressing down on him like a hand. Tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock, the pawnbroker alone. He began to prepare. Part 1, Chapter 6. The preparation was methodical. This surprised him, in a way, that his hands could be steady, that his mind could organize itself around the practical requirements of what he was planning to do. He made a loop inside his coat, a sling, hidden in the lining, where the weapon could hang. He prepared a pledge item, something to pawn, that would give him a reason to be there. He thought through the sequence of events: arrive, ring the bell, enter on the pretext of pawning the item, wait for the right moment, act. The weapon was an axe. He did not own one. He needed to acquire one without drawing attention. He thought about this and realized, with the particular clarity of a mind operating at the edge of its own stability, that the janitor's room in his building usually had an axe, used for chopping wood, hanging just inside the door, visible from the corridor. He would take it on his way out. He would replace it on his way back. This seemed, to the part of his mind that was still operating in the register of normal human planning, like a reasonable solution. The other part of his mind, the part that had been watching all of this with growing alarm since the dream about the horse, did not say anything. It had stopped saying things. It had understood, sometime during the previous night, that saying things was no longer useful. The day passed. Raskolnikov moved through it in a state of strange detachment, eating something without tasting it, lying on his sofa, standing at his window watching the street. He was present in his body, and absent in his mind, or perhaps the reverse, very much in his mind, and barely present in his body. The city continued outside the window. People walked past on the street below with the purposefulness of people who know where they are going and why. Evening came. At 7 o'clock, he put on his coat. He went down the stairs. He passed the janitor's room. The door was open. The janitor was not there. The axe was on the wall just inside the door, where it always was. He took it. He put it in the loop inside his coat. It hung there, heavy and specific, against his side. He went out into the street. The evening air hit him, warm, still, smelling of the city, and he walked through it, with the steadiness of a man who has made a decision so completely that the body has simply accepted it, and is carrying it out. He climbed the stairs of Alona Ivanovna's building. The staircase was quiet. He had timed his arrival to avoid other residents. He reached the third-floor landing, and stopped outside her door. He listened. Silence. He rang the bell. Nothing happened. He rang again. A shuffling sound. Then the sound of the door chain being checked. She was cautious, always cautious, the product of years of lending money to desperate people, and knowing what desperate people were capable of. The door opened a crack. One eye. Sharp. Suspicious. Then it opened wider. He held out the pledge item, and said he had something to pawn. She let him in. The room was exactly as he remembered it from his rehearsal visit. The position of everything was correct. He had been right about all of it. The chest under the window, the keys on the nail, the inner room where she kept her money. She took the pledge item and examined it. She moved to the window to look at it, in the better light. Her back was to him. He reached inside his coat. He had thought about this moment many times. He had theorized it, rehearsed it, argued it to himself in every register, moral, philosophical, practical. He had arrived at the moment through the longest and most exhausting rational process of his life. None of that was present now. What was present was simply the moment itself, the old woman at the window, her back to him, the axe in his hand, and the particular quality of silence that exists in the fraction of a second before something irrevocable. He brought the axe down. She fell. He stood over her and the world was very quiet and very strange, and he understood, with a completeness that no theory had prepared him for, that he had just done something that could not be undone. Then there was a sound from behind him. Lizaveta, the sister who was supposed to be elsewhere, who had changed her plans, who had come back early, and was standing in the doorway with a bundle of laundry in her arms, and her mouth open and her eyes looking at him, with an expression that was not accusation and not terror, but something simpler and more devastating than either. The expression of a person who simply cannot understand what they are seeing. He had not planned for Lizaveta. There had been no Lizaveta in the theory. Part 1. Chapter 7. He left. This is how Dostoevsky writes it, not with drama, not with the heightened language of a scene that knows its own importance, but with the flat, slightly unreal precision of a man in shock doing what needs to be done to survive the next 10 minutes. He locked the door from the inside. He checked that no blood had fallen where it would be visible. He found the keys. He found the chest. He found the money, more than he had expected, in various forms, along with small pledges from other desperate people, whose names he did not know and would never know. He took what he took. He checked himself. He cleaned what needed to be cleaned. He moved through the apartment with the mechanical efficiency of a mind that has shut down everything except the immediate operational requirements of not being caught. He unlocked the door. He checked the landing. Then, the most terrifying moment of the chapter, perhaps of the entire novel, he heard voices on the stairs below, people coming up. He retreated back into the apartment and stood behind the door in the dark and listened to them come closer and stop on the landing outside. They rang the bell. They knocked. They talked to each other in low voices. Something about Alona, something about an appointment, something about the door being locked, which was strange because she was supposed to be home. They tried the bell again. Raskolnikov stood behind the door in the dark and did not breathe. He was 4 feet from two people who, had they opened the door, would have seen what he had done. He was 4 feet from the end of everything. The people on the landing argued about whether to wait or come back later. They decided to come back later. Their footsteps went away down the stairs. Raskolnikov stood in the dark for a moment longer. Then he slipped out onto the landing, pulled the door shut behind him, and walked down the stairs with the careful steadiness of a man who was not running because running would be noticed. He reached the street. He walked. He replaced the axe in the janitor's room. The janitor still absent. The room still open. The wall still waiting for the axe as though nothing had happened. He went up to his room. He lay down on his sofa. He stared at the ceiling. He had done it. He had killed the pawnbroker. He had killed Lizaveta. He had taken the money. He had walked out of the building, and through the streets and up the stairs, and he was here, in his room, and no one had stopped him, and no one knew. The theory had been correct. He had done it. He was still here. The world continued. He waited to feel like Napoleon. He did not feel like Napoleon. He felt sick. He felt cold despite the July heat. He felt the particular quality of wrongness that has no name and no location in the body, but is present everywhere simultaneously, in the hands, in the stomach, in the back of the throat, in the specific silence of a room that used to contain a person who is no longer anywhere. He had thought the hardest part would be the act. He had been wrong. The act was over. What came next was the mind. And the mind, it turned out, was going to be with him for a very long time. Chapter Transition. You have reached the end of Part 1, Chapters 5 through 7 of Crime and Punishment, by Fyodor Dostoevsky. In the next episode, Raskolnikov falls into a fever. He loses days. When he recovers, the world has changed, not physically, but in the way it feels to be inside it. He discovers that a friend has been looking for him. He reads about the murders in the newspaper. He is summoned to the police station, and he meets, for the first time, the investigator Porfiry Petrovich, the man who will spend the rest of the novel doing the one thing more terrifying than accusation: waiting. The next episode is available next week. Subscribe to Around the World Lit Audio so you never miss a chapter. A new episode arrives every week.